The following video has been approved by the Jetty marketing team. The video has been rated Jetty. The following video may not be suitable for all viewers. G'day mate, and welcome to Dyson Sphere Program with me, Jetty. So, after over 100 hours in gameplay, I did want to share with you guys my top 15 tricks. This is tricks for new players, this is tricks for experienced players. These are things that are going to help you in your game and are going to be important to know. So the first thing we want to cover, really simple one, burning some fuel for Mecha Power, because Icarus, let's be honest, he chews through a little bit of fuel. You can throw in anything that's burnable into the fuel chamber. So anything that has a kilojoule or a megajoule fuel chamber gen count, you can throw into Icarus. And as you can see, our plant fuel has a minus 30% fuel gen. So Icarus here is only making 840 kilowatts. If we throw in our logs at minus 10%, we're now up to 1.08 megawatts. If I throw in the coal, we're now producing a sweet 1.2 megawatts. And if we actually check our tech, he burns 1.2 megawatts, so we're actually getting a 1-for-1 value at that point. But if we put in some of the more exotic fuels, I guess, like the energetic graphite, we can see we're going to go up to 1.2 megawatts because the graphite has a 60% bonus. So, first off, throw in any fuel. Any fuel is better than no fuel. On top of that, look for those fuels that are have a little bit of a bonus to keep you up and running for longer, but at the end of the day, throw in absolutely anything. But that is going to bring us into our second tip, that is charging from the grid. As you can see, we have our level 2 towers over here, and we are charging at a super fast rate. The wireless power tower actually has the ability to charge our mecha, and they also stack. So if you can get them in a nice 3x3 grid, get 9, stand right in the middle, you're going to have all the power in the world. But you might say, Jetty, hang on, that's great if I want to recharge, but when I go building something, I'm off and moving. Well, maybe not. If we go into settings, we go into gameplay, and we access God mode, building mode, we can then bring up the building task. Let's put down some wind turbines, and I can now freely scroll around the map with the WASD keys and build to my heart's content. And we can just make the robots do all the hard work for us. So yeah, throw one there, and so on and so forth. And I can stay happily standing here right in the middle charging up. But if you do get to your maximum build range, how do you move Mecha about? You can hold down shift and right click, and then he'll take off. You could also hold down shift and use the WASD as well. It's normally easy just to tell him to run to the next location, and off you go. You can just keep putting down these charging grids everywhere. There is one very important thing to realize, is these do have a idle power consumption. So I normally carry like 10 on me. I use 9 of them. I have a spare, just in case I forget to pick one up. And I just keep moving my battery recharger with me. But that brings me on to power, tip number 4. What's the best power for early game? Honestly, wind turbines, okay? Wind turbines for 2 reasons. One, they need a little bit of room between them, so you end up automatically spreading them out across the multiple continents that you start on. On top of that, they carry power from one tower to the next, which does mean, if we go to map view real quick and turn on the power grid, it does mean that automatically you end up taking power all out over the network. As you can see, my 2 oil refineries are actually down here all the way at my south pole. But because I happen to wander already over there to place wind turbines, I had a power grid right beside me, and I didn't have to bring power across the map to power these guys up. So there's something you really should keep in mind. After early game, you're done with wind, you've finished placing enough wind, I really recommend going on to tip number 5. Yep, that's right, tip number 5, oil and gas. Gases from your gas giants. Both these are infinite resources. If we actually turn on the resource overlay, we can see my crude oil here, it produces 2.02 per second. This one produces 1.1 per second. Like I said, your mileage may vary, but as long as you bring in 6 oil per second to 12 refineries, I do have a video linked at the top right hand corner explaining how the refineries and the cracking work, you can actually pull out 40.32 megajoules worth of power when run through thermal power stations. So that is a lot of power. On top of that, if you need more, just crack it. if we grab some of those, we can see that hydrogen has a fuel rate of 8 megajoules, the refined oil has a fuel rate of 4.4 megajoules, and every single time you crack refined oil into hydrogen, you actually get a fuel bonus. So crack it if you need more, set up a whole separate dedicated refinery just to crack fuel, just to burn the fuel, just to make sure you have no more power problems, and you can definitely use the infinite resources of both the oil and the gas giants when you get to them to power your planet of industry. Now, with all that spaghetti right beside your oil plant, right beside your power plant, what is going to make your life easier? It's going to be these guys, the splitters. So, splitters going to make your life so much easier. The splitters have an important function. Okay, actually, they've got a couple of important functions. First off, we're going to cover the priorities. You can prioritize the input of a belt along with the output of a belt. So, as you can see, I'm prioritizing, my fuel in from my refinery stack and actually prioritizing it to go out to cracking. It's really where I want the fuel to come first. It's then going to come back in from cracking, and then whatever's excess, i.e., over and above, we're going to pump out here into this splitter, which is then going to do the same. It's going to prioritize it going off to re-cracking. Yes, I want all the hydrogen for all the power to then bring the excess out to my tanks. The other option splitters have, and this is the important one, is if you press tab, they switch what type of pattern they are. So we can have one there, and one there. And as you can see, this one's quite simple. It's your standard 4-way splitter. Probably very familiar with this one from Satisfactory. On top of that, we have a stacked version. So this is 2 belts in, 2 belts out, right on top of one another. And then we have a 4-way splitter with 1 belt segment raised. These are very, very important, very, very helpful. And on top of that, you can put a splitter on top of a splitter. Now, they're not joined internally. Unfortunately, I'd love to see that feature. But they're definitely stackable, one on top of one another. Which means you can use these to definitely organize up your base. But with the talk of stacking, that's going to bring us into tip number 7. Stack everything. Stack your storage, stack your belts, and more importantly, use your storage as an inline buffer. Get a production line running early. Don't need it just yet. Buffer up some for later. Stack that storage. Take your storage chest, run an output belt past it with 1 sorter in and 2 sorters out. Means it can slowly fill up, and when it comes time to empty, it can always empty faster than it can fill. Tip number 8, want to save some for yourself? Put another storage chest beside it in the sunlight. Put another storage chest beside it and hook up a silly belt. Put another storage chest beside it, hook up a sorter, and cap the chest to an amount you find reasonable. Be it 1 slot, be it 30 slots, be the whole 60 slots. Use your inline buffer to then create your personal storage. Tip number 9, those storage chests, well, they are the MVP of this video, as they can be used as an actual elevator. Want to go from ground level to 10 levels high and stuck in your own mess? Then use a storage elevator. You might notice that a storage Mark 1 is 2 belts high, and a storage Mark 3 is actually 3 belts high. Once you've got the belts in place, you can definitely hook up a sorter to input or output. So we can actually use a sorter to make an instant elevator for a 3x3 section. And ba-bum, ba-bum. If you don't want to actually store the materials, on your way up, make sure you cap every chest on the way up, except for the top one, to just 1 slot. And if you want to work your way down, make sure you cap every chest on the way down to just 1 slot, except for the bottom one. Well, after talking about sorters, they should be our 10th tip. They come in 3 speeds, and each one being twice as fast as the previous level, but their speed is tied to how far they have to move. The more tiles they have to move, the slower they are. The good news is, like I said, they do double in speed from level to level to level, with the Sorter Mark III with research can actually be upgraded to carry 6 items before it has to move, which makes it really handy for filling and emptying those faster belts. Bonus tip. You can set if we click on the right part, you can set a filter of the sorters right here with this set filter window. At the same time, you can also check what the speed of your sorter currently is. Tip number 11 being the belts themselves. They come in 3 speeds as well. We have our Mark 1, which you get very, very early on, moves 6 items per second. Then we move on to the Mark 2, which moves 12 items per second. Finally, double the speed at 12 items per second. Finally, you get the Mark 3, which moves 30 items per second, being 2.5 times the Mark 2 belt. So I'd plan my base around having the Mark 2 belt and saving the Mark 3 belt for when you really need it or when you're working on completely brand new production lines. Bonus tip, Mark 3 sorters. Mark 3 sorters, fully upgraded sorters. You're actually going to require 4 of them to fully saturate a belt, both on output and on input. 3 is not quite enough. Eventually, we end up with gaps in the belt. There we go. There's a gap. There's another gap. There's another gap. So yeah. 4 of them. 4 of them to fully saturate a belt and 4 of them to fully empty a belt. For quick tip number 12 and 13, both with our belts, we can clear the products off the belt by clicking on the belt and clicking on this window. The good news is if you click and hold, whatever pops up in that window instantly ends up in your inventory. For lucky number 13, I will actually talk about side loading. So what you can actually do is you can join 2 belts together in an intersection rather than using a proper splitter. And what it's actually going to do is give this belt a priority and have this belt fill in any gaps. Never want your power plants to run out of power, then maybe side loading a backup fuel source for those just in case moments. Side loading is also great for miners. And for tip number 14, have you been confused about the miners? You know, outputs, 0 items per second, outputs 240 items per minute on a per second belt. Really confusing. Look, the simplicity of it is every single node is worth half an item per second. So if we put down you there and hook up a belt, we'll see that this guy's going to do 60 items per minute covering 2 veins. So if you have 2 miners doing a total of 12 nodes, that'll give you 6 items per second, more than enough to fill a tier 1 belt. When you get up to tier 2 belts, you're going to actually need 24 nodes for 1 belt. And yes, we've got some overcoverage here. Perfect. You'll need 24 nodes for one belt at 12 items per second. Any node that is covered by 2 miners will actually get mined out twice as fast. So aim for maximum coverage at all times, grabbing at least 12 nodes to fill a belt, but more is always better. And lastly, tip number 15. Now this one is a game changer. Did you know you could actually click this button up here to resort your inventory? You know, in case it's a mess from you crafting random crap running around the planet, or just hoping that it'll help you find some sort of junk in your inventory. Well, it turns out if you have some other random junk in your inventory and you hold down Control and click on a blank tile. Now, I know, look, I often don't have a blank tile either, but if we click on a blank square, it also sorts your inventory. So really get into the habit of every single time you open your inventory, just find a blank square, hold down Control, give it a click, resort it all the time. You also find it compresses the resources down. Any split stacks will automatically be merged back together. So with that bombshell out of the way, I'll give you my last tip, my bonus tip, if you will. Enjoy the game. It's a great game. It's a great game full of a heap of spaghetti, many things that you can and will be building. Most importantly of all, make sure you write your name in the stars for all to see. Now, if you found this helpful, click the like button below, and we all know YouTube needs to know that you like video before they recommend it to others. If you have any other questions, any tips that I missed, leave them down in the comments section below, or maybe jump on our Discord and ask there. Lastly, if you're new here, I invite you to hit the subscribe button on the way out, and maybe check the other tutorials in this playlist on your screen right now. As always, thank you for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Alright, bye.